Think of your hormones as an orchestra. Every instrument matters, and after 40, the conductor gets tired. I want to give you 10 foods that act like gentle conductors and tuners, things you can add to your daily life that may help smooth insulin, support thyroid and adrenal balance, nudge sex hormones toward stability, and protect the brain from the slow fray that comes with age. This isn't magic or a promise to reverse time. It's a practical map grounded in physiology and clinical hints. Stick with me to the end, subscribe if you want more grounded tips like this, and tap the bell so you don't miss what I publish next. I first met Maya at my kitchen table on a gray Tuesday that smelled faintly of coffee and citrus. She's 47, a part-time teacher, and had the tired, jittery look of someone whose sleep pattern and hunger were at odds. I feel like everything shifted overnight, she told me. My moods, my weight, my energy. I read all these things about hormones, but it's a fog. I poured 2 mugs of chamomile and said, gently, that food isn't destiny, but it is a tool. Over the next hour, we walked through 10 edible practices that, together, can nudge hormones back toward rhythm. I framed them as I do here: a short image, a plain explanation of mechanism, a cautious nod to the evidence, and a usable tip you can try tomorrow. 10. Cruciferous vegetables, your liver's little mechanics workshop. Think of broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and kale as the grease that helps your liver process excess estrogens and metabolic waste. These vegetables provide compounds that support detox pathways in the liver. They boost enzymes that help convert potentially inflammatory estrogen metabolites into forms that are more easily excreted. Clinical studies and population research suggest diets rich in cruciferous veggies are associated with healthier hormone profiles and lower risk of hormone-related imbalances. Practical takeaway: aim for a generous serving most days, steamed or roasted with a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil and lemon. If you find them bitter, try quick sautéing with garlic and a splash of acid to soften the flavor. 9. Wild-caught fatty fish and other omega-3 sources. The brain and cell membrane's soft, flexible armor. Omega-3 fats, especially EPA and DHA, are building blocks for neuronal membranes and anti-inflammatory signaling molecules. They help modulate cortisol responses and can support insulin sensitivity by calming low-grade inflammation. Research, including randomized trials, shows omega-3s are associated with improved mood and reduced inflammatory markers in adults. Practical takeaway: 2 small servings per week of wild-caught salmon, mackerel, or sardines, or daily plant sources like ground flaxseed or walnuts if you prefer plant-based. A tablespoon of ground flax in yogurt or a small handful of walnuts as a snack goes a long way. 8. Extra virgin olive oil, internal sunscreen and metabolic lubricant. Rich in monounsaturated fats and polyphenols, olive oil helps protect cell membranes from oxidative damage and supports healthy post-meal blood sugar responses, which eases the insulin spikes that can disrupt hormonal balance. Mediterranean-style studies consistently link higher olive oil consumption with better metabolic health and lower inflammation. Practical takeaway: use olive oil as your primary cooking and dressing fat. A drizzle over steamed grains or a spoon in your morning grain can be an easy swap for less favorable fats. 7. Colorful berries, the brain's reset button. Blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries are small powerhouses of polyphenols and antioxidants that support BDNF, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that helps neurons adapt, resist stress, and maintain plasticity. Higher BDNF is associated with better mood regulation and cognitive resilience, both crucial for stable hormonal signaling. Studies in humans and animals suggest regular berry intake can improve certain cognitive markers and reduce oxidative stress. Practical takeaway: a cup of fresh or frozen berries most days, blended into yogurt, sprinkled over oats, or eaten plain. They're an easy, low-calorie way to add protective phytochemicals. 6. Leafy greens and magnesium-rich plants, the quiet stabilizers. Spinach, Swiss chard, and beet greens bring magnesium, folate, and a range of micronutrients that support sleep, muscle function, and the enzymatic reactions behind hormone synthesis. Magnesium in particular helps relax the nervous system and can improve sleep quality, and better sleep means more regulated cortisol and sex hormone rhythms. Research links higher dietary magnesium with improved insulin sensitivity and better sleep metrics. Practical takeaway: a large salad or a green smoothie most days, and consider simple swaps like swapping white rice for a bed of steamed greens under your protein. 5. Fermented foods, the microbiome's tiny diplomats. Yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and miso introduce live microbes and feed the gut communities that influence estrogen recycling, inflammation, and even mood through the gut-brain axis. A healthier microbiome helps regulate how the body reclaims or excretes hormones, and clinical trials show fermented foods can alter microbiome composition in ways associated with improved metabolic and immune markers. Practical takeaway: include a small serving daily, a spoon of sauerkraut, a cup of plain kefir, or a small bowl of naturally fermented yogurt. If you're on medications or have health conditions, check with your provider first, but for most adults, a modest daily serving is safe and beneficial. We paused for a moment and Maya asked, "Do these things really change hormones, or is it just about feeling better?" I told her it's both. Food changes the environment inside your body, the inflammation level, the microbes in your gut, how cells respond to insulin. Those shifts don't promise dramatic overnight reversal, but they alter the ongoing conversation your cells have about whether to build, burn, store, or repair. 4. High-fiber legumes and whole grains, the steady moderators. Lentils, chickpeas, oats, and barley slow digestion, blunt blood sugar spikes, and feed the gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, molecules that signal for better metabolic balance and lower systemic inflammation. Over time, consistent fiber intake can improve insulin sensitivity, which reduces the overstimulation of androgen pathways and helps keep weight and menstrual or metabolic cycles more stable. Population studies associate high fiber intake with better metabolic markers and reduced risk of chronic disease. Practical takeaway: a half cup of cooked legumes several times a week, steel-cut oats for breakfast, or adding beans to salads and soups. Slowly increase fiber to avoid digestive discomfort, and drink water. 3. Cruciferous sprouts and sulforaphane-rich foods, the molecular guardians. Broccoli sprouts and similar young cruciferous greens are concentrated sources of sulforaphane, a compound that activates cellular defense pathways like NRF2. Think of that pathway as a molecular switch that tells cells to clean up damaged proteins and protect against oxidative stress. This helps tissues remain responsive to hormones rather than becoming damaged and insensitive. Small clinical studies and mechanistic research suggest sulforaphane-rich foods can support detox pathways and reduce markers of oxidative stress. Practical takeaway: try adding a handful of broccoli sprouts to sandwiches or salads, or lightly steaming broccoli and pairing it with a pinch of mustard to boost sulforaphane formation. 2. Protein at breakfast, the hormonal signal booster. A breakfast with adequate protein, eggs, Greek yogurt, smoked salmon, or a pea protein smoothie helps stabilize blood sugar and reduce mid-morning cortisol surges. Protein supports muscle maintenance, which is a major determinant of metabolic rate and insulin sensitivity as we age. Trials show higher protein breakfasts can reduce hunger and improve overall daily glycemic control. Practical takeaway: aim for 20 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast. A couple of eggs, a cup of full-fat Greek yogurt with nuts, or a protein-rich smoothie can do the job. Keep in mind preferences and digestion. Plant or animal sources both work. 1. Fermented and fiber-rich foods combined, your microbiome's master key. This is the most transformative item because it ties many threads together. When you feed and seed your gut, fiber for the microbes and fermented foods for live cultures, you influence estrogen metabolism, inflammation, gut-derived signaling molecules that affect appetite and mood, and even insulin responsiveness. The microbiome talks to the liver, the brain, and the immune system. Improving its composition can ripple across hormonal systems. A range of human studies now link diverse, fiber-rich diets with better metabolic profiles and lower inflammatory markers. And emerging trials hint at benefits for menopausal symptoms and metabolic well-being. Practical takeaway: make fermented foods and fiber-rich plants daily companions. A bowl of mixed greens, a side of lentils, and a small serving of fermented vegetable or yogurt. Between items I described, mechanisms in plain language: BDNF as the brain's repair signal, NRF2 as a cellular cleanup switch, mitophagy as the process of recycling old energy factories inside cells, and Maya nodded, sometimes scribbling in her phone. We cooked a simple plate: roasted Brussels sprouts with olive oil and lemon, a small fillet of salmon, and a bowl of mixed berries with a spoon of plain yogurt. The kitchen smelled of citrus and caramelized sugars. The plate looked like a living color chart for balance. "This feels doable," she said, and there was a relief in her voice that was part practical and part emotional. I reminded her, and I remind you, that none of these foods are prescriptions. They may help, studies suggest associations, and some clinical trials show benefits, but individual responses vary. If you have medical conditions or take medications, check with your clinician before making sweeping changes. Small, consistent swaps compound. Start with 1 or 2 shifts this week. Add a protein-rich breakfast and a daily cup of berries, or swap your usual fat for extra virgin olive oil and try a fermented side. Maya looked at the plate again and asked what the first few weeks would feel like. I told her to expect subtle wins: steadier mornings, fewer late afternoon energy dips, maybe a slightly clearer mood. Hormone balance is not an instant edit. It's a slow tuning, like warming up an orchestra before the performance. We made a plan together: breakfast protein 5 days, 2 servings of fatty fish per week, and a small daily serving of fermented food. She smiled, more hope than doubt in her eyes. There were more practical patterns I wanted to share: timing meals to support circadian rhythms, the role of resistance exercise in preserving muscle and insulin sensitivity, which herbs and spices help inflammation without being framed as remedies. But those felt like another conversation, one that built on these 10 foundational foods. I told Maya we check in 3 weeks to tweak and celebrate the small changes. Outside, the afternoon poured rain against the window, and the house filled with the warm, honest scent of food that was both comforting and purposeful. Maya stood, gathering her coat and a small container of leftovers. "Thank you," she said. "I already feel like I have a map." If you want, in the next segment, I'll walk you through timing, portions, and simple recipes that lock these foods into a realistic weekly plan, how to turn these ideas into habits that survive travel, work, and family life. For now, take one small action today. Add a cup of berries or a serving of fermented food to one meal. Notice how you sleep and how your appetite moves over the next few days. We'll build from there. I closed the jar of yogurt, folded the napkin, and set the rest of the plate into the fridge. The rain steadied. The house smelled faintly of lemon and roasted green. There was the ordinary, quiet truth: small choices repeated become habit. A practical 7-day starter. Day 1-2, protein at breakfast, 2 eggs or Greek yogurt plus nuts, a cup of berries with lunch. Day 3-4, add a fermented bite at dinner and a generous salad. Day 5-7, 2 walks of 20 minutes, 1 portion of fatty fish. Keep breakfast protein forward. Keep portions modest. Think palm-sized protein, a fist of vegetables, a thumb of fat. Write 1 sentence each evening about sleep and appetite. Notice patterns before you judge them. If a day slips, begin again at the next meal. The goal is not perfection, but steady tuning. The orchestra warms note by note. I turned off the kitchen light and lingered for a moment, feeling how a realistic map had eased a worried face. The map, after all, matters only if feet begin to follow it. The next morning, I set the kettle on and wrote out on a scrap of paper the practical scaffolding I promised.
timing, portions, and 3 simple recipes that could live on repeat without feeling like punishment. I wanted Maya to have more than rules, a set of small rituals she could return to even on the busiest day. Timing first. Circadian rhythm matters less as an esoteric concept and more as a habit map. Eat within an hour of waking to signal metabolism that the day has started. Prioritize a protein-forward breakfast so blood sugar and appetite are steadier through the morning. Aim to finish the largest meal of the day by early evening, ideally 2 to 3 hours before bed to keep sleep deep. If you tolerate it, a daily 12 to 14-hour overnight fast is a simple default. Say, stop eating at 8 p.m., resume around 8 to 9 a.m. This window can be widened or narrowed to fit family life, but the routine helps hormones find a rhythm. Portions next. I drew a palm-sized protein, a fist of vegetables, and a thumb of fat next to each other, not as dogma, but as an easy rule for plate building. For most women Maya's age, that translates to roughly 20-30 grams of protein at breakfast, 25 to 40 grams at lunch, and a similar amount at dinner. Vegetables filled the space without counting calories. Fats were intentional and modest: olive oil on greens, a few slices of avocado, a small handful of nuts. Then the recipes. 3 that share ingredients so grocery lists stay short and the fridge doesn't become a museum of unused jars. 1. Morning Armor. Greek yogurt bowl. 3/4 cup plain Greek yogurt or a plant-based yogurt with added protein. 2 tablespoons chopped nuts, 1 tablespoon ground flaxseed. 1 cup mixed berries, a drizzle of honey if you like. Stir, eat, rinse.
Protein plus fiber plus small fat. If she needed it portable, I suggested a hard-boiled egg and a small tub of yogurt. 2. Lunch ledger. Lentil and walnut salad. 1 cup cooked lentils, cooled. Handful of chopped parsley, diced cucumber, cherry tomatoes. 2 tablespoons toasted walnuts. Dressing, lemon, olive oil, pinch of salt, crushed garlic. This kept well across a few days and provided plant protein, fiber, and a fermented bite if she added a dollop of plain yogurt on top at the table. 3. Dinner anchor. Pan-roasted salmon and greens. 4 to 6 ounce salmon, seasoned and seared until the skin crisps. A pan of quick roasted Brussels sprouts or broccolini, tossed in olive oil and lemon. A tablespoon of sauerkraut or a yogurt herb sauce on the side for fermentation and flavor. This felt celebratory without being complicated. I wrote a travel cheat sheet in 2 lines. Carry single-serving nut packs, a tin of tuna or smoked salmon, and a small jar of fermented vegetables. Look for protein-rich options at airports: Greek yogurt, hard-boiled eggs, mixed nuts, fresh fruit. For restaurants, pick the protein, then pile on the greens. Choose olive oil-based dressings and ask for sauces on the side. Exercise got a short, practical bullet list. 2 resistance sessions per week, 20 to 30 minutes of squats, push variations, and rows preserve lean mass and help insulin sensitivity. These don't need a gym. A sturdy chair, a pair of dumbbells or water bottles, and a door anchor for bands suffice. 3 20-minute walks after meals are low-cost insulin helpers. The post-meal walk is one of the most underrated tools I shared. Sleep hygiene was simple. Wind down cue an hour before bed, reduce bright screens then, and keep the bedroom cool and dark. If caffeine disrupts sleep, shift the last cup to before 2 p.m. When Maya arrived for our 3-week check-in, she looked like someone who had been trying and had also met life in the middle. Her hair was pulled back, a small smear of yogurt on the corner of her lip from the morning. She carried a battered tote with a thermos and a lunchbox. "I made the salmon twice," she said before we settled. "I swapped out snacks. I haven't been perfect, but mornings feel easier and," she paused, searching for the word, "lighter. My afternoons aren't as desperate." We put the tray down and I asked the questions I always ask because answers are where nuance lives. Sleep, appetite, bowel habits,
Mood, energy peaks. She reported steadier mornings, 2 good nights of uninterrupted sleep that week, and the return of appetite that wasn't just feed the craving, but real hunger before meals. She'd lost a modest amount of weight, and, more importantly to her, the constant preoccupation about food had dulled. But I've had nights I fell off, she added. Wine on Friday turned into pizza, and when the kids were sick, I went back to comfort foods. Of course, I said, that's life. We plan for the ideal, and we plan for the interruptions. We talked through strategies without moralizing. For wine nights, add a protein-rich snack beforehand. For sick kids, lean on the simple bowl, broth-based soup with added lentils, a salad with canned salmon, or an egg and veg scramble. The aim was to reduce damage, not to control every moment. She also mentioned bloating on a couple of days after I suggested increasing fiber. I reminded her to ramp fiber slowly and to separate pulses from heavy fiber days early on, and to try a tablespoon of plain yogurt with meals for a week. Sometimes a small, consistent fermented source helps the microbiome adapt. If bloating persisted, we'd investigate food sensitivities or timing of carbohydrate loads. We reviewed her habit list and celebrated 3 wins: mornings with protein, 2 walks most days, and the fermented bite at dinner. Then we adjusted the plan. Given her schedule, I suggested swapping one of her longer walks for a short resistance circuit in the morning twice a week, kept the night finish time at 8 p.m., and added a mid-morning protein snack on the busier days. Before she left, I folded a single-page checklist for her pocket: breakfast protein, cup of berries, 1 fermented bite, 2 walks this week, 1 resistance session, write 1 sentence about sleep and appetite each night. Small markers, I told her. You should be able to say them with your eyes closed. She tucked the page into her phone case, and for a moment we both stood in that tidy silence that follows practical decisions. Thank you, she said again. This isn't dramatic, and that's what I need. On my way to the door, I added 1 final thought about measurement. Don't live by the scale. Watch energy, the shape of hunger, sleep quality, and how your clothes sit. If those are trending right, the rest usually follows. That evening, I wrote a 1-week micro plan to leave with her. Mapped in meals she could swap in and out without thinking too much. Breakfasts that repeat, 2 lunch templates, 3 dinners rotating the same proteins and veg, and snacks that are portable. I labeled each meal with a small icon: protein, veggie, fermented, so decision fatigue would surrender to habit. Outside, the rain had stopped and the air smelled like washed pavement and citrus from the lemon we'd used earlier. The house felt ordinary and finite in the best way, the work of health as a series of small decisions made again and again rather than a quest for a single miraculous edit. I watched Maya walk down the path and thought about maps. People don't need complete overhauls. They need routes they can actually follow with the feet they have today. The recipes, the timings, the 1-sentence logs, they were scaffolding, not constraints. If she kept stepping, notes turning into habits, the orchestra of her hormones would tune itself instrument by instrument. I made a note to send a follow-up message in a week, a single check-in, not a quiz. Small supports keep momentum without smothering it. Then I turned off the light and folded the clean napkin into the drawer, certain this kind of gradual care was how change happened. Quietly, persistently, like seasoning added a little at a time until the whole dish tasted different.